With button-up collared shirts, sometimes one part of the collar wears out. Maybe it's the collar that is like against you. And you'll notice this one. So this whole part of the collar has worn out, but yeah, the other side is perfectly fine. So you can actually take this apart and flip it around, patch this side of the collar, and you'll be good to go. So I'm just going to demonstrate how to do that. So first, you're going to start plucking away at the stitches here. So as you can see, now I've taken the whole thing apart. And for this particular one, make sure, over here, it's slightly worn near where that buttonhole area is, and this part is going to show when we flip it over. So what I've done before is actually used some of these pieces to create a little patch here, and the rest I'm going to make in like a white fabric because it's not going to be seen, but just this area we are going to see. So I do want to make that you know, as neat and nice as possible. What I'm going to do is grab some pins, brought them over prepared, and I'm going to cut away at some of this fabric. Now, I'm going to do all of this by hand. I'm folding down my raw edge and under like this. There we go. And so now I have all four sides folded down. I'm going to grab some white thread, thread a needle, there we go. This one is a little bit fat for a needle, but that's okay. And I'm going to leave it just one thread length, so I didn't put them together. And I bury my knot underneath the bottom like that. So it kind of, oh, it doesn't even catch my knot. So I'm going to try to pull a little bit less and just bury it. So then we're digging down through the main portion of the collar and then grabbing this patch so that it's hardly visible. Up, down, and just with really tiny stitches. I'd call this kind of a slip stitch. Up and down, you know, around the whole patch like that. Um, Here I'm coming towards the end of. Now that I finished that piece, I'm going to need to cut my buttonhole through it. So here's the buttonhole, just like this. And then it's going to be a raw edge. So you know how on a buttonhole stitch, you're basically solidifying that raw edge so that it isn't going to ravel. We're going to try and do the same thing. So I put a double loop through my needle so that I have 4 strands, not the bottom of that. And again, I'm going to bury my knot somewhere over here so that it's not seen. And then, as in the, it's like called a blanket stitch. I'm going to go around and make a stitch around our hole. As neatly as possible, which sometimes when you have that many threads, it does snag like this. I'm just going all the way around. And then that's going to be patched. So I'm going to do something similar on the other side. Now that the collar is free, I want to take a piece of just plain white, maybe white shirt fabric, white muslin. I'm actually going to use it as like a facing. So I already cut it out. And it doesn't have to be perfect. I'm just pinning it down along the edge, like so. And then as I get over to the corner, sometimes it has a little bit of trouble. So I didn't need to make them come out this far because I'm actually going to allow them to go straight down. So I'm going to trim some of that fabric off. But as much as possible, I'm going to fold this under. And pin that down. And just remove that piece. Same thing over here. Anything that's frayed, I can trim it out. And bring it down. Like that. Now this will get flipped up. And when stitching, I just have to remember that I don't want to stitch through the whole thing. I just want to stitch through this part because we are going to have to put the color back on the shirt. And in order to do that, we need that to be open. So now that it's all pinned together, of course I have to thread my machine because that wasn't threaded. And now I'm tangled around pins. Okay, so I'm going to remove that. And just start stitching down. So this is a top stitch. And once we get to the corner, needle down and turn. And now here's the tricky part. I don't want to stitch down here because then I'm going to be closing up here. So I want to release that. And then I folded this back so the other side isn't going to get in the way. And then I'm again top stitching along here. I do have some loose threads that I could have gotten rid of ahead of time. And there we go. And I realized that I forgot to stitch this little piece. So I'm going to go ahead and do that now. There we go. And clip that right off. Okay. So now that this is sewn together and I have my patch, I have to put this on the shirt. So it takes a little bit of thinking, thought process to figure out what direction to put this on. So I have the shirt laying face up. Here's the yoke. And here is the new collar. There's the part that I don't want seen. So when it's on the wearer, I want the collar to go like this. So the white is folding down under, which means that this piece is going to get sewn to the inside and then it's going to flap over the top. So I'm very carefully going to go ahead and kind of lay out the seam allowance around the side. And I start them on both sides so that you can kind of meet in the middle. And if there's a need for ease, we can do that. Right over to here. This. And then we're going to ease this right in like that. Now this piece is ready to get stitched down on the machine. So back to the machine we go. I don't want a ton of seam allowance on this either. Kind of following the original intended seam allowance. Right along here. Bad habit, I should not go over pins. Definitely, I do at times. Almost here. Just snip this off. There we go. So now I want all of this along the collar to be laid flat so that the collar is right along the edge of that seam, but all of those raw edges are going to be tucked into the shirt here. As you can see, there's a couple other frays that I do need to repair on this shirt. But lined up here. Like that. Okay. Now we're ready to stitch this piece down, and I pulled my thread up too soon. Now I'm just going to stitch right along here. Make sure the collar is covering over this raw edges so that the seam is folded together. So it is a curve. Don't get confused by the curve. And it's trying to come out of here just a little bit. We don't want that to happen. And we are golden. And pull this out. And then stitch this down. The remaining part that I have here is the button. If you notice, so this is how it would fold across. What happens is that the buttonhole is actually on the opposite side. Just because we flipped the collar, that puts it on the opposite side. So what I'm going to do to fix that problem is put like a fake button here, the one that was originally on the shirt, so that you see it from the front. And then underneath it on the back side, I'm going to use a button that button is what's going to button into here. And that is going to act as your shirt button. And then you're all finished with this project.
Thank you for watching. You can shop tutorials and classes on my website, naomifeda.net. Be sure to like and subscribe. And as always, may God sow his love into your heart today.